Right. Your Excellencies, dear ladies and gentlemen, it is truly an honor to be here with you. As a moderator, I warmly welcome you all to the fourth panel discussion of the Dubrovnik Forum. We have a wonderful panel with high-level participants ready to share their views with you on the implication of the current security challenges in Europe and the consequences for the EU enlargement policy. The European Union is a peace project, established after the horrors of the Second World War. Once again, we see how a war in our proximity affects our lives and poses a security threat to the EU and other countries on the continent. Since the unprovoked Russian invasion of Ukraine, an act of aggression that violates international law, the European Union has taken a series of sanctions to impose severe consequences on Russia and to hinder Russia's capacity to continue the hostilities. At the same time, our leaders work hard to mitigate the consequences for our citizens in ensuring the energy and food security and fighting the rising inflation. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine has shown the need for a stronger and more capable European Union in the field of security and defense. In order to assure the stability in the European Union, the bloc has to invest in the security in its immediate neighborhood. We should work on our relations and representation in partner countries and develop more assertive, proactive foreign policy based on preventive diplomacy, especially regarding frozen conflicts. A few cases in recent history show where the EU could have done more to prevent a crisis. In the Sahel, the international community did not succeed with its counterterrorism agenda, and citizens are still fleeing from the region, seeking refuge in Europe. In the South Caucasus, Azerbaijan and Armenia have been involved in a bloody conflict in 2020. While the EU remained rather passive at first, other regional actors stepped in, and Russia used the momentum to strengthen its influence in the area. I welcome the latest efforts of the Council President Michel in engaging with the leaders of the two countries in order to find a sustainable, peaceful settlement. One region that is crucial for the security of the European Union is the Western Balkans. Also here, preventive diplomacy can impact the prosperity and stability of these countries. The best way to help these countries to thrive is by welcoming them in the EU by making progress on our European enlargement policy. No other policy framework or partnership would deliver the same result as the finalization of the accession procedure of these 6 states. The war in Ukraine has brought the enlargement policy back to the top of the European agenda, followed by the granting of candidate status to Ukraine and Moldova, and by promising European perspective for Georgia. While the application of these countries happened at an unprecedented speed, the countries in the Western Balkans are waiting for decades for positive news from Brussels on their European integration. At the recent Council summit, the leaders of EU member states also discussed how to continue with the Western Balkan countries. While calling for more progress on the case between Bulgaria and North Macedonia, as well as in the Pristina-Belgrade dialogue, there was also clear readiness to grant candidacy status to Bosnia and Herzegovina if the Commission reports in favor. The member states also called on the political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina to finalize an agreement on the electoral and constitutional reform. After many attempts, even by intervention of American and European diplomats, the electoral law in Bosnia and Herzegovina still does not respect the equal rights for all constituent peoples and citizens, although this right is in line with Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement. You would expect that this Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement ending the horrible war in Bosnia and Herzegovina is respected by European politicians, just like other peace agreements. However, while the German Minister of Foreign Affairs publishes an article to defend the Good Friday Agreement and the power-sharing principle enshrined in it, it is incomprehensible to see how the same party is investing time and effort to abolish the same power-sharing principle in Bosnia and Herzegovina. While the EU requires a strong positive enlargement policy, the aspiring member states also need to deliver on their reform process. The European enlargement mechanism is a merit-based process that prioritizes the fundamentals first. These reforms require strong political courage to take decisions that benefit their citizens and bring the country closer to the EU. With this situational description, I hope to have provided some food for thought for the discussion that will follow. It is now time to turn our panel for further debate. Without further ado, I will now introduce our speakers. And I will ask our speakers in 2 minutes explanation on their position towards all these questions to give us an overview and to start interesting discussion and to offer maybe possible solution for the impasse. So we will start with Madame Donika Garvala-Schwarz, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora from Republic of Kosovo. Madame Garvala-Schwarz, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear Gordon, thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this extraordinary forum. And now with your experience, you help us in the region understanding that it's important not only to talk about the region, but to be in the region and to talk with the region so that we help our friends in the northern part of the European Union, but in the neighborhood as well, to understand better the needs and the potential that is in this in our region, in the Balkans. At the same time, yes, we have had a summit, European Union summit lately, and as much of us expected, it was a summit of talking nice words, but less things done. What do I say? Why do I say that? We had this discussion about having Ukraine given the candidacy status before the war in Russia, Russia's war against Ukraine started. And as we have seen then, there was a lot of skepticals in the European Union telling us that these are things that are not possible and not shortcut and nothing else. Then a war came and the right decision was taken because it's important to help Ukraine in these times to win this war, not only by political help, but by military and economically and everything else. It's important not to wait for another war in the Balkans, in being able to include and to integrate this European region in the European Union, because that's the normal thing to do. The Balkans has shown, states, countries in the region has shown, and those of us, Croatia, Slovenia, who are part of the European Union, has shown that Greece, that they can be not only as good as others, but their contribution is an extraordinary one. So if I could dream, I would say I wish a European Union that is able to see more the potential, that the problems that can appear, and the European Union that stands to the promises and to their words. So the problems are different in the region, but one is clear. Except of one, the Western Balkan has shown that we are part of the European Union foreign policy. 5 countries have aligned fully with the sanctions against Russia, and more than that, every one of these 5 countries has tried to do a little bit more than that what was the obligation. Kosovo has aligned fully with the sanctions. We have made possible for up to 20 journalists coming from Ukraine because, as we today discussed, that is a big challenge that we are all facing with fake news and trolls and bots. So we have made working space and living space for journalists from Ukraine so that they help us all together to understand better what is happening there and what can we all together do, and a lot of other things. So the Western Balkans is a region that belongs to the European Union, as Eastern Europe has shown in the early 2000s. And that's why the delay is not contributing to the European Union and to the region less than that. So if we see what has happened the day before yesterday in Albania, having thousands and thousands of people on the main square in Tirana, protesting against the government. On the other side, we see the violent protests in northern Macedonia. We should understand that it's about time to act and not just to speak about the integration of the Balkans. And to act will show much more effective than in trying to ignore the problem, because the problems are there. And just not discussing the problems does not mean that we are able they will just disappear. So we cannot be silent about the fact that, yes, in the Western Balkans, one of our neighbor countries has shown not being part of European values and European solidarity to Ukraine and against this war in Ukraine. And that needs to change, but how we see the situation is that that cannot change through lip service, through asking Serbia not to do what they are doing. We can altogether change that only if we try hard and work hard in identifying in Serbia European democratic forces, democratic structures who are able to make Serbia part of the European idea and the European values. Because yes, we are for the integration of the Western Balkans, but this needs to be merit-based. We are not for integration of countries who are not able to show that they stand for the European values, because European integration is not about European money, but it's about European values. And then at the end, every one of the countries who is able to fulfill the requirements in democracy, in rule of law, in economic growth should be welcomed and should be expected with open arms. So, thank you.
Can I just briefly interrupt you, because later on we will jump to Special Representative Mr. Lajčák to ask one question about Kosovo-Pristina, about Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, to update us on this matter.
Yes, the dialogue between the Republic of Kosovo and in Serbia is facilitated by the European Union, and I'm happy to see Mr. Lajčák here, who is present at the meetings of the negotiations groups, but of the head of states as well. And Kosovo has shown, the new government since last March has shown that we are eager and committed to have the final agreement with Serbia. We are eager and committed to have the mutual recognition and are ready to help in the process so that Serbia is able to recognize simply the reality. We are not talking about something new. We are just talking about having Serbia able to understand in the reality in the neighborhood and to accept that. We have made progress in the last days in this process of dialogue. This is an agreement about energy, electricity in the northern part of Kosovo, but I will leave this to Mr. Lajčák because I have no ownership on that. It's more him helping achieving that. We are expecting maybe 2 or 3 further agreements, but one thing must be clear: you cannot make dialogue with somebody who is not ready to be part of the dialogue and to contribute to the dialogue. One-sided, when you have conversations where just one side is really interested, and Kosovo, yes, we are interested, not because of the European Union or because of Serbia, but we are interested because our people are paying the price for this blockage that Serbia is making. And that's why we are committed and we are ready to do what is needed. But one thing is clear, Kosovo is a sovereign country, it's an independent country, and every solution about that can only be based on the constitutional framework of the Republic of Kosovo.
Right. Thank you very much. I just want to remind you that last week we had the adoption of the report on the progress report on Kosovo, on Serbia, and on Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we will continue with our host and our dear Foreign Minister, Minister Radman, who will update us on the position of Croatia and the European Union on the situation in the Western Balkan, and on the decision of the Council to adopt the final remark regarding the Western Balkan and the enlargement at a recent Council. And thank you.
Thank you, Željana. And so I'm not in position to express my gratitude to organizers because of their meeting, because I am part of there. But I'd like to express my gratitude to my team, to my colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Really, they did a great job to organize this very traditionally Dubrovnik Forum, and so we are very proud to have you here in Dubrovnik. You are all welcomed, and I really look forward to organize even next year at the same time, 8 or 9 on July, just on the day before on the Dubrovnik Festival. It's great that Željana, you started first with Kosovo, Republic of Kosovo, the country, and Croatia is a vocal proponent of their whole integration, not only European integration, but also NATO. And we strongly support the visa liberalization of Kosovo. We think that it could be not only a political message, but from the psychological point of view, it could be a good way to encourage to relax dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina, however. And Croatia is also actively participated in sending this positive message among the European Union. And first of all, when comes the FAC, Foreign Affairs Council, I always underline the importance to also to others, 5 countries in the European Union, to make a step forward and to make progress, but to make progress with concrete steps. That means we have to recognize independence of Kosovo, the European Union as a whole, because it is the reality. And I also appealed to Serbia to accept this reality and probably to doing that the same. To recognize reality, because it is reality. Kosovo is independent countries and sovereign country. I visited once Kosovo, and I am really impressed because of the reforms you have been doing, and you are just a European oriented country, and you can contribute to of course to our European project, however. And 30 years ago, it was not imaginable that that after the Soviet Union collapse and breakaways of former Yugoslavia, that something similar, like in former Yugoslavia, with this tragedy and aggression towards Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Kosovo, we thought that it's something that it is beside us, and that we could just to open a new chapter of reconciliation, of dialogue, and to make a better world, to make a progress, to remove all the obstacles and to ensure the world for our next generation. and in a peaceful and democratic way. And Croatia, which is really in these 20 years, achieved the most important foreign policy goals, namely the NATO membership, EU membership, and now, as my Prime Minister mentioned today in his introductory speech, we're about to be a member of Schengen zone, Euro, as of 1st January 2023, and Pelješac Bridge on 26th of July, which is in fact a European project. And of course, yesterday I'm very proud that I, together with Secretary General Knudsen, Ulrik Knudsen, we opened a new era, or we opened the negotiations, or just our readiness to adopt the values of the OECD, this very important organization. But however, so we can just speak a minutes, and just in a nutshell, that Croatia is really staunch supporter of the enlargement of Western Balkans, and given the circumstances, because of the Russian aggression on Ukraine, what is actually an unprecedented case in 21st century, Russia broke the international law and destabilized the rules-based world order, and we have to, in the context of the new environment, we have to take this opportunity, and with the, of course, granting of candidate status to Ukraine and Moldova, and the European perspective for Georgia, what you mentioned in your outset of your introductory speech. Of course, enlargement is obviously back in the spotlight, and European Union should be more present in the Western Balkans. And at the last European Council, of course, that it is very important that all the EU leaders expressed their commitments to the EU membership perspective of Western Balkans, calling, of course, for the acceleration and of the accession process, and further advancement of the gradual integration between the EU and the Western Balkans countries. When it comes to Croatia, so we are continuously promoting the enlargement, and it has not been forgotten that Croatia, during its EU presidency in the first half of 2020, the Balkan Summit, the enlargement was high on our agenda, and coming with a Zagreb declaration, and later on Germany and Slovenia, that means that we are steadily and supporter, and we like, first of all, we support the accession negotiation, to start negotiation with Republic of North Macedonia and Albania as soon as possible. First of all, we would like to see a win-win solution together with our friends in Bulgaria, because it's in our interest. Bulgaria, like North Macedonia, they are our friends. Bulgaria is in European Union. Of course, we would like also to help it and to assist and to see a common solution, and we would like to help it.
Right.
When it comes to the Serbia, of course, and we also support EU perspective of Serbia, but there are some really necessary reforms they have to undertake, and to face the past and the legacy of war. And Croatia doesn't have only open bilateral issues with Serbia, but they are universal, they are European values when it comes the missing person, when it comes the glorification of war crimes, etc. So, but of course we would like to help and to assist it and to share our values. Bosnia and Herzegovina is really it's our immediate neighborhood. Croatia is bordering the longest, so we shared the longest border. We are only the European country bordering Bosnia and Herzegovina, more than 1,000 kilometers. And we are, who more than Croatia is interested to have a stable, institutional, functional, and prosperous Bosnia and Herzegovina. Croatia always support territory integrity and independency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And Croatia is also a staunch supporter of the EU to grant candidate status of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And my Prime Minister actively engaged himself at the last EU summit to convince that how it's necessary to get also the EU candidacy status to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but once a substantial set of reforms is implemented. More good news indeed, however. So the Bosnia and Herzegovina is a multinational country, and it is the fact Bosnia and Herzegovina, one country, two entities, and three constituent peoples and others. And what is necessary to have a stable and prosperous Bosnia and Herzegovina, to eliminate all forms of discrimination during the elections process, first of all, and to guarantee the legitimate representatives to be elected in all the bodies of first of all, of representative bodies, in the presidency and in the House of People. There is an actually very easy issue: to respect each other, the respect that the people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, to respect them and to have the equal rights, and only if to respect the multinational character, the history, the past actually, what was through the centuries, and it is also up to the majority peoples who have to pay more attention to those who are least numerous, and they are across right now. So we are against. We cannot favorize the tendency, which are very dangerous for Bosnia and Herzegovina, the separatism and unitarism. And the Croatian, they are, as the less numerous people, they are squeezed between them. But the problem could be solved very easily. And it is our message, and we would like, of course, to have stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's our immediate neighborhood. Croatia fulfilled all the necessary foreign policy goals. What remains, it is the stable regional policy.
Thank you very much, dear Minister. And now we are continuing with Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hellenic Republic of Greece, Nikos Dendias. And who is the best to explain us about the safety and security of external borders and the situation in the Western Balkan in the context of the enlargement and all these global security issues that we are having in Greece and the identity issues that Western Balkan is facing. So, dear Minister, you have the floor.
Well, thank you so much. I will not take much of your time. First of all, I would like to thank our gracious host, Gordon. For me, it's a great pleasure to be again in Dubrovnik. I think it's my second time here, but I think I'm beginning a tradition of the Greek diplomacy to be present here. It is on this very important forum on understanding the Balkans, the challenges, what we're facing, and also arrive together by talking to common grounds of how we can move forward. Of course, this year, this forum takes place under the very dark cloud of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And I have to say, what this teaches us all is the need to align ourselves, everybody behind international law, against revisionism, against any kind of effort to change borders through force, against war. But having said that, I think we're in the right place to speak about this. Why? Because Dubrovnik, being a very beautiful architecturally city and a perfect example of the world city in the Adriatic, a UNESCO protected monument, at the same time is a success story. A city destroyed by war and reconstructed in a perfect way. If you go around Dubrovnik today, you would never thought that a couple of years ago wars was raging around here. And if I may tell you also a personal experience of mine, I was here in the honeymoon of my marriage when the first mortar fell into Dubrovnik and we had to flee. And of course, after such a start, nobody expected that marriage to end very well. But anyway, it is, yet again, the city is a proud success story, and I'm so happy to be here again. Now, and this is the perfect place also to address the challenges of the Western Balkans, because Bosnia-Herzegovina, Gordon talked about it, you talked about it as well, and I'm sure the rest of the speakers are going to address it. Bosnia-Herzegovina is a challenge for all of us. And we would all love Bosnia-Herzegovina to become a success story. But we all know that potentially it's a powder keg. And also we all know that some sort of electoral reform is needed in Bosnia-Herzegovina in order to address the challenges of today. Also, the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue is something that has to be held as much as we can. We would love to resolve this issue. And of course, Miro is somebody that would add to what Donika just said on how we could assist on that. The enlargement process in the Western Balkans. Greece was lucky enough to be the first country, the first Balkan country into the European Union. And we feel we have an obligation. And we feel we have fulfilled our obligation as far as the Eastern Balkans is concerned, Bulgaria, Romania, but the Western Balkan countries also need the help of Greece and Croatia and the other members to fulfill their European future. And I'm here to advocate, as we're advocating everywhere, that we have to start the negotiations with Albania and North Macedonia yesterday, not tomorrow. This is long overdue. And also the fact that we have new candidacies, Ukraine, should not allow us to forget how important it is for Albania and for North Macedonia to start this process. It's a trip. It will not be an easy trip for them, but we need to show them that the European Union is able to fulfill the promises. And there are other promises that have to be fulfilled. For example, the visa liberalizations for Kosovo, which we haven't fulfilled. So the European Union has to be much more present in the Western Balkans. Also, we have to look into creating more interconnectivity between us in all sorts of ways. Transport. We need more access to connect us. I mean, it is right now, if you start down the Adriatic, you cannot, from Trieste, you cannot end up in the Greek Mani, which is the end of Greece easily. We should have a highway that connects everybody, but also energy interconnectivity. What's happening after the Russian invasion of Ukraine in the energy market shows very clearly how energy interconnectivity is of the essence. My Prime Minister Mitsotakis, was just yesterday was in Thrace inaugurating the IGB, the interconnector with Bulgaria. But we need more projects that would put us all in a common grid. I have to say that it is one thing is so clear that through connectivity and cooperation, we can build such a bright future for our region. And I have to say that we should all try to work on this, because this would benefit everybody. This is obviously a win-win project. And I think what better place to see clearly than here in Dubrovnik watching the lovely Adriatic Sea. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Minister, and thank you for being short and concise, as Madam Chanel said, less is more, really. So we will continue with the longest-serving President of the Parliament, now Minister of Foreign Affairs, the dear friend I know for many years, Mr. Krivo Pakapic, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Montenegro. We were recently with Foreign Affairs Committee visiting Montenegro from European Parliament, and we said that Montenegro should be supported. It's the country that is really favoring all these values that we are talking about, and through communication and dialogue now have some stability. So can you please tell us about your vision on what is needed as well?
Thanks a lot, Madame, and thanks to Gordon for this great hospitality. My last visit on the Dubrovnik Forum was 10 years ago. The name was Croatian Forum in that period. And that period, Putin sent a message, I believe, to the EU that EU will be complete in the moment when the Russian Federation became the part of European soil. And now you can see the change. Or probably will be the part of the same soil, but not in our type of the values or something like it. But I don't want to miss the other opportunity. My hometown, Kotor and Dubrovnik, they are twin cities. Elder brother is Kotor, younger brother Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik was more successful city in the last few centuries. But it's not just emotional issue. I would just try to give you how the logic in foreign policy of two small cities is applicable even now for you and for us, very shortly. Dubrovnik, when the Ottoman Empire overcame the Balkans, decided to pay the haraj, to pay the price to the Ottoman Empire, to get rights for free trade, for free sea, Ottoman Sea, and survive on that way few centuries. Even has given the best family sons, like some kind of guarantees in Istanbul. Kotor decided, quite different, very close, very similar towns, decided to go in coalition or an alliance with the Venice to build up the fleet and to fight all the time. That's push Kotor on the open sea, on the bigger sea. But Kotor achieved a higher destination, got more allies, and see more world. And that's why way of the thinking even the EU. EU decided, like Dubrovnik, to pay the haraj to the Russian Empire, to get raw materials, to get the other things, and to close little bit eyes on the values, like Dubrovnik in that period. It was diplomacy. Now it's high time for the Kotor way of the politics. Kotor way of the politics relate with not now, with the other empire. With the other empire, that's the answer now for the new challenges and for the new time. We don't have now alternative. But what is the experience of the Montenegro with the Russian Empire? We celebrated 311 years of official diplomatic relationship with the Russian Empire. Like small state, and what is the message even now very similar. Ask me usually, what is your experience with the Russia Federation now? I told them the same one last 310 years. Precisely. They use Montenegro like small knife in the stomach of Ottoman Empire. Now they use the others like little big sword in the stomach of Euro-Atlantic community. Balkans, again the Balkans. And that's the same pattern of the Russian Federation or Russian Empire. They just matter of the title, not of way of ruling, now and the last 300 years. Using always even the same institutions for that. In previous period, diplomacy, money, gunpowder for Montenegrins. Now, not yet gunpowders, but they are using the other proxies, Orthodox Church, like political institutions, security, intelligence institutions without accountability, and using the corruption related with the autocrats because the autocrats, the real natural allies of this type of imperial policy of the Russian Federation. Be caution. Balkans is not only one target. That pattern is alive, all around us, all around us. And I'll finish very shortly with this next message. On the Balkans, you can see easy what is diagnosis. If you like democracy, you are going on the West. If you like power, power means money and long-lasting ruling, you are going on the East. But what is additionally threatened for all of us, now we have two Easts, not only one. Next one is even much bigger, probably, and more danger. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this interesting comparison and for the predictions. We are hopefully, Kotor is a Bay of Saints, and I was really glad that you're sharing my bishop as well from Mostar, so who is now bishop in Kotor, and thank you for favoring and protecting also Croatian heritage. Which is quite important as this shared identity and shared heritage are concerned. And now we are coming to the focal point, and that's Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have a Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs who will enlighten us about the recent negotiations and on the issues that Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing for the upcoming elections, and you're entering electoral period without election law, and how this challenge will be dealt with and also in a country.
Thank you very much. First of all, allow me to thank Minister Grlić-Radman and his team for setting all this up and inviting us here today. In many discussions until now, and I'm for sure that also beyond me, my country would be mentioned, because 27 years after the Dayton Peace Agreement, we still have unfinished peace constructed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Today, we are living the deepest political and institutional crisis, which is not security crisis today in Bosnia and Herzegovina, namely because we are trying, or some trying to neglect the basic formula that brought peace to Bosnia and Herzegovina 27 years ago under the Dayton Paris Agreement. And that formula is 3 constituent people and other citizens living in Bosnia and Herzegovina, 2 entities and 1 state. Add to this that the conclusions of the Council, which have mixed emotions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and of course disappointment by not getting the candidacy status for my country, and yet at the same time, for the first time, we have a clear guidance what to do to get the candidacy status, some advancement and 14 key priorities, and limited constitutional change and the electoral law reform is giving us light at the end of the tunnel that this candidacy status is achievable for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that the European perspective for my country is still ongoing and alive. At the same time, this fact that we did not have a candidacy status is opening the door for the third players within the region that were mentioned, that are galvanizing or supporting either the separatistic or unitaristic ideologies within the country, which are equally on equal footing endangering the peace and stability of my country. The way forward is, without any doubt, the fact that we continue with the integration process for the European Union, and I would add to the NATO, because both umbrellas are, switches or safe switches for the stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the region, wider region. We have to try to learn from the past, because if we fail in the integration towards the EU, this entire region could be, again, troublesome. I can only imagine the presence or present, how it should look like in the context of Russian aggression to Ukraine if the Bosnia and Herzegovina 2010, when it was promised to have the membership action plan for Bosnia and Herzegovina within the NATO, had additional step towards the NATO integration. I'm sure that from 2010 until 2022, we could be shoulder to shoulder with Albania, North Macedonia, and other countries of the region, because at that time, there was no opposition within the Bosnia and Herzegovina to the NATO membership. Having the conditionality of immovable property, which was given to Bosnia and Herzegovina, is just an example of short-sightedness and not having the strategic overview of the issues. No one could predict terrible Russian aggression to Ukraine, but this could be, you know, the way how to continue. This year, electoral year in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as in many countries, is of course politically always a year when the political narrative is rising up. I hope and we work that the October elections will be in a peaceful and democratic manner, as all the elections so far that we had and that they were, you know, organized, but with the difference that we have to finally, in order for our European future, to have final decision and agreement on the limited constitutional change, at that time allowing every individual to participate in the electoral process, and yet at the same time to have this overreaching principle of legitimate representation of constituent people in the institutions where the constituent people should be represented, also deeply enshrined into the electoral law. This is not a political position, this is a position of our constitutional court in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and if we follow the basic principle of rule of law, international courts, equally as domestic courts' decisions, needs to be implemented without discussion. I think and welcome the fact that the Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, two right now with the candidacy status and one with a clear European perspective, will galvanize again discussion about the Southeast Europe region, and in particular Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that this enlargement process, which is the best tool of exporting the stability outside of the European Union, integrating and having the economic prosperity of those countries who want to become the EU member states, is going to continue with more focus and leadership on the EU side, having in mind that the time is an asset or a resource that we don't have on our side. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Brkic. And now we are passing the floor to Velislava Petrova, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Bulgaria. We met this morning. You asked me what we are going to talk about. It's very difficult to ask you any question, Bulgaria, this sensitive moment with North Macedonia. So I would like you to give us your position on the talks, on the President Macron's proposal, and on the situation view from the Bulgaria side.
Thank you so much. It's also a huge pleasure for me to be here, and I can thank the organizers, and thank you, Skopje Gordon, one of the very few foreign ministers who speaks Bulgarian as well, so it's always easy to have additional warm welcome, so I'm really grateful to be here. As you said yourself, it's been a very intensive and dynamic time for Bulgaria, for the government. Since the start of a new government in the beginning of the year or end of last year, we didn't certainly expect to be engaging in trying to manage the consequence of the aggression of war in Ukraine and that really spread of the aggression and the consequence of it in Europe. But also the file that we inherited as a new government was something that we had to start with a lot of damage control and a lot of mistakes from the past that we are blamed for. And we really started on a very positive footing of trying to find commonalities and trying to find a positive way forward rather than trying to engage in a blaming game or in any form of pointing out weaknesses. So in that process, it was really important that we try to make the case that Bulgarian reservations were really based on the fact that the European accession process requires adherence to values, to international commitments that are made by parties that are part of the process, but also by the fact that we need to meet midway. We need to, it's a two-way street in which we need to see that willingness to go on that path of value change and a change in the value system that comes with the European perspective. What happened over those 6 months, you can imagine that a lot of the focus of European member states, including the French presidency of the Council, was on the war in Ukraine, and so this file was really left to the side until perhaps a bit later in the presidency. But here's the time to really thank the French presidency, the leadership of President Macron himself, to really engage in this topic and to try to find a format through which we would really talk not about just bilateral issues, but we would talk about European values and European mechanism to provide guarantees both sides, not just to Bulgaria, but to North Macedonia as well, and to clear their accession journey from undefined requests or undefined reservations, but really make it visible, predictable, and focus on European values. And here is also the time to thank the European member states who also stepped up to provide an opportunity for the Bulgaria and North Macedonia to find a way forward as well. I think North Macedonia also had the opportunity right now to be very heavily engaged in their own accession process to the extent where they could really discuss the specifics of what is ahead of them and to be able to gain political support within the country. It's a privilege that other member states as well, through the French presidency, gave to North Macedonia. On the side of Bulgaria, it was a time of turbulence politically as well. But as you know, the decision of Parliament to accept the proposal of the French presidency without any further requests happened 2 days after the non-confidence vote in the country. So it was really a time where we could have easily decided to shift our focus on internal politics, but it was a clear commitment of the importance of continuing that accession journey of Western Balkans and in this case of North Macedonia. So we've gone through a process in very difficult times to take all the necessary administrative and political steps in order to open that path. And we now are really hopeful that the same can happen on the side of our North Macedonian friends, so that we could have in a very short period of time an actual movement forward. We have really opened that door on our side, and we really expect to have the European maturity and the political responsibility taken on the side of North Macedonia to be able to seize that opportunity that is at the moment, that all, as I said, both the French presidents, European member states and Bulgaria managed to find a European format through which both sides will receive the guarantees that they needed. But in that regard, I remain hopeful, and we all do, that we will have that positive response on the North Macedonian side very soon. We've opened the door, and we are really waiting for them to walk through it together with Albania. As regards to, if I can move a bit broader from this, I think what's important for us is that often we heard the importance of the fact that in the context of the war in Ukraine, the enlargement process, EU enlargement process, should happen sooner and faster, and we all realize the importance of it. I think we should make a very important differentiation between the NATO enlargement process and NATO integration, and then the European integration. While NATO is providing us with the protection from external influence and forces, and now with the NATO summit in Madrid, we heard that we are not just investing in protecting and responding, but also in being prepared to future threats. I think the European accession process is a lot more of a complex process that requires understanding and development of the values of good neighborly relations, of understanding the countries around you and all the members of the Union, and finding compromises and ways to work together. So there, it's really the two processes of NATO and EU integration are interrelated but not completely overlapping. And it's good to know that the NATO membership of some of the countries in the Western Balkans allow for the time to have to instill there and to introduce the necessary reforms that they need in order to progress in their EU accession path. But for us, Bulgaria remains a big supporter and believer of the EU path of Western Balkans, and in that regard, even at the cost perhaps of a very new government that had to face a lot of challenges, it still remains a priority and remains a very important area for us to work on. So I really hope that we have the necessary steps taken as well, so that we can move forward on this very soon. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. We will come back to the real conditions, what is being asked for, to make this discussion a bit more lively and to wake up our audience a bit. As a politician and former diplomat, I think these days we need the real answers sometimes, and this is a right format. And who else can offer us the better view on the future of a Western Balkan and how one of the very important countries, that's Germany, sees it, than Madam Anna Lurchmann, Minister of State for Europe and Climate from Federal Republic of Germany. So, Madam Lurchmann, we have had the era of Angela Merkel for many years, and equidistant approach in Western Balkan, and the policy that was favoring enlargement. We have the new government now in Germany, and for us it's very interesting to find out as well your view on Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and also on Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia, how this new government is seeing all these countries, their integration, and the equidistant positions that you are going to continue following the step or is it the German policy going to be a bit more assertive and more interventionist in the Western Balkan? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks, big thanks to the hosts. I think it's really timely that we talk about this issue here, and for us as a new German government, it's very clear that the Western Balkans are at the heart of Europe, surrounded by EU member states, and the region is really of utmost importance to us. We are actively supporting the EU perspective for all 6 Western Balkan countries. We want to strengthen the reform-oriented forces in the region. We want to help the region to increase the resilience also vis-à-vis the more destructive influence of actors such as Russia. And we really clearly seek an active role in stabilizing the country, the region, and push towards EU integration. And just as a testimony to that, you can look at the numerous visits to the region from our Chancellor, from our Foreign Minister. We've also appointed a special envoy for the region, Manuel Sarrazin, that is continuously around, was just in Skopje to talk about the recent discussions regarding the agreements made also with Bulgaria. And it's also clear that the German government will continue to be engaged in the Berlin process that Chancellor Scholz will invite to a summit in the fall. There will be meetings of foreign ministers, of the ministers of economy, and we will focus a lot on the common market that is so important, but also on the green agenda that really we want to push forward. And we've already heard here on the panel a lot about the disappointment with the Western Balkan Summit last week. And I can really tell you I am as disappointed as you are. We would have liked to see much more progress, and it's most urgent that the access negotiations with North Macedonia and with Albania start very, very quickly. We welcome the progress in this manner, and really think that now there's this window of opportunity that we really move through the open door that is there. We also clearly need progress regarding visa liberalization in Kosovo. Also here, it's really the part on the EU to deliver on promises. And concerning Bosnia-Herzegovina, I know that there was the expectation in the country to get candidate status also now. But I clearly have to say here that from our perspective, we see a complete lack of political will of leaders in Bosnia-Herzegovina to advance on the necessary reforms. And that was very, very visible, particularly in the last months. So I think in giving this development, it would have sent the wrong signal to give candidate status now. And I just want to bring some examples for this lack of political will. First, there was the financing for the election preparations was only possible due to the intervention of the High Representative. Second, even very simple reforms regarding the rule of law are stuck in the parliament for a very, very long time now. And it's clear that we need to see progress on these reform issues for a country that wants to move forward on the EU pathway. And this is really the clear difference with regards to Ukraine, where we see that there's a big interest and progress from the side of the government to actually move ahead with reforms despite being caught in the middle of a very, very brutal war. And we are, of course, also concerned about the recent decisions by the National Assembly of the Republika Srpska to move towards more autonomy. So there are really several examples for why we've seen steps backwards. And it's particularly clear that the secessionist policies put political stability in the whole region at risk, actually. And it will be the population of Bosnia-Herzegovina which will suffer, including in the Republika Srpska. And it's clear that the international community has to act very, very decisively on this. Therefore, Germany, as well as the EU, has started to withhold funds. Germany more than 100 million euros. And no one should doubt that Germany will continue to uphold Bosnia-Herzegovina's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We will do what we can to prevent further deterioration of a security situation in the country. And just yesterday, we've decided in the Bundestag to participate again in the Operation EUFOR Althea. And with regards, but Mr. Lajčák will of course talk more about that, to the EU-facilitated dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia, also here we need urgent progress. This is crucial for the realization of the EU perspective, and this is also a clear message that our Chancellor Scholz conveyed during his visits both to Pristina and to Belgrade, and also his invitation to Prime Minister Kurti and President Vučić to Berlin. So we're really, really, really engaged. And we are so engaged because we really feel and believe that the place of the Western Balkans is in the EU. We share common values, we share common history, we share common aspirations for democracy and for freedom. And it's very clear that Russia feels threatened by this commonality, by our common values and aspirations for freedom and democracy. And thus they saw disunity, they saw mistrust among us in the region. And we cannot let this happen. I think our strongest weapon against this campaign also of disinformation, of distrust, is unity. So we need to overcome these nitty-gritty of issues that we've been talking about for sometimes for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We really need to overcome these issues and focus on the big picture. And the big picture is what brings us closer together, what brings us together strong on the side of democracy and freedom, because this is the battle that we're in right now.
Right, thank you very much. And now we are coming to Miroslav Lajčák, Special Representative for Belgrade-Pristina Dialogue and other Western Balkan regional issues. I must say that he was the only really high representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina respected by all three sides, and that's a biggest achievement. So if we can nominate somebody from the medal, that goes to Miroslav Lajčák. As he had this very diplomatic and sensible approach that we will always remember and share. So Miroslav Lajčák, can you tell us a bit more about Belgrade-Pristina dialogue? What is being impeding this dialogue, and your view also on the other Western Balkan burning issues, especially with Bosnia and Herzegovina, and what Madame Luhrmann just said about the interventions of high representatives and the need of the interventionism from the Office of High Representatives in the future.
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you very much. Let me start by thanking Minister Radman and his team for bringing us back to Dubrovnik. Gordon, it's not always easy to convince people that we are coming to Dubrovnik to work, so that's why I would like to encourage the audience to take many pictures of this panel and tweet about it so we can prove that we are here for business and not only to enjoy beauties of Dubrovnik. Madam Moderator, you started your introduction with a reference to Russia's war on aggression against Ukraine, and rightly so, because this war has changed everything, has ended the global world order as we knew it, and has changed the way we look at everything. And of course, nothing is immune from the impact of the war, including the Western Balkans. For many years, there were people on the side of the European Union who believed that there is no need to rush, that the Western Balkans are in a safe place, there is nothing bad that can happen to the region, and we can focus on our internal agenda, decision-making first, and then to deal with the Western Balkans. Now the Russia's aggression clearly showed that this is not the case. We do not have the luxury to let the region wait anymore. That's one thing. So that means we need to finish the unfinished business. Second effect of the war is that it made the enlargement political again, because we got lost over the years in the technical language and the technical part of the enlargement process, which is important, but the war made it very clear that enlargement is a political process. And it's really based on shared values and on full alignment with our norms and with our values. So paradoxically, besides of the terrible and tragic things that this war has produced so far, it had a positive impact on the enlargement because it put it back to the forefront of our attention. It really created a momentum. What is crucial now is that we don't let this momentum pass, and that we work together to turn this momentum into a new quality. What does it take to get there? It takes a focused effort from both parties. On the side of the European Union, we need to regain the strategic leadership in the process of enlargement. We have to make the enlargement and the European future for the region credible and tangible again, because right now it's neither credible nor tangible. And we can do it, because we have demonstrated that the geopolitical leadership and the vision towards the East, our decision on Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia was the right decision and was highly appreciated by our partners, and we saw and we listened to Minister Kuleba earlier this morning. But somehow we fail to demonstrate the same leadership when it comes to the Western Balkans. And of course, the outcome of the recent European Council created lots of frustration and disappointment in the region, in the Western Balkans, and I can fully understand that. So therefore, we can do it and we should do it. We have to bring back the credibility of this process. But of course, our partners must do their part as well. And when I speak about it, first and foremost, of course, to be very serious about the reforms. Rule of law, transparency, of course, justice, fundamental rights. to speak less about the reforms and to do more the reforms. Second, alignment with our norms, with our views, with our foreign and security policies statements, because this shows that we share the same values. The third element is, of course, addressing unresolved issues, bilateral disputes, and the problems that the region is still facing more than 20 years after the war. And the fourth important element is to show through the functioning regional cooperation that the region is willing and able to work as part of the wider entity. Now, if I want to be more concrete, of course, the most important thing and the most urgent right now is to finally unlock the accession negotiations for Albania and North Macedonia. Equally urgent and long overdue is to grant a visa-free regime for Kosovo. The next important, I would say, the most strategic process in the Western Balkans is the normalization of relations between Kosovo and Serbia. And here I want to praise both parties for their commitment to the process. We have established very good working rhythm at the level of chief negotiators. They are coming to Brussels every month. We have agreed on, very recently, on a very important agreement on energy, which really brings rule of law, transparency into this area. And we are now in the phase of implementing this agreement. There are other 3 or 4 agreements in the pipeline at a very advanced level of finalization, and I really hope that we will finalize some of them soon. But more importantly, we agreed with both leaders, Prime Minister Kurti and President Vučić, that we need to establish the same rhythm at the level of leaders, because normalization is the leaders' agenda, it's not for the chief negotiators. And they both agreed to engage much more and to basically define what normalization means and how to get there. So this is what I expect in coming weeks and months. Of course, the painful issue in the region is the functionality, or better to say dysfunctionality, of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And when it comes to this country, here applies the Clausewitz formula upside down. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, the politics is continuation of the war by different means. And the country is backsliding. As Deputy Minister Brkić said clearly, many challenges, not yet, I would say not yet the security challenge, but every other challenge is there. I would encourage more internal dialogue, and let's stop dreaming that you can replace lack of political will to engage with your legitimate partners by bomb powers. Bomb powers cannot substitute for the political will. And the leaders are elected to engage rather than to lobby abroad to try to impose their vision, ignoring the vision of the partners. This is my very strong belief when it comes to the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And of course, as I mentioned already, the regional cooperation, because right now it looks like we have more regional format than regional cooperation. Too many formats and too little cooperation. This needs to change, because and this is my final remark, the region is right when they complain about the lack of commitment on the side of the European Union, and I admit that, but at the same time, the region must convince the European Union that they are willing and able to function in the wider European family, and also to demonstrate that they also understand that things have changed after Russia's aggression against Ukraine, and they should also adequately change the way they speak and they act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we are finally coming to somebody who will not talk about enlargement unless Great Britain now, after this recent events, wants to rejoin as a third country. But I have a real pleasure to present Sir Stuart Peach, Prime Minister's Special Envoy for the Western Balkan. Can you, Sir Peach, tell us about Her Majesty's position on the Western Balkan security issue, and maybe inform us a bit more on the recent event in Northern Ireland, because at the time I was a student in London when the Good Friday Belfast Agreement was made in 1999, and we had a few years before, in 1995, Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement. So for some of us who don't know about power-sharing governments, Germany has already expressed its position on Northern Irish Protocol. And on Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement, maybe you can tell us a bit more on Her Majesty's position, how this should be respected and how this fine balance will be found on both sides of the European borders.
Thank you, and thank you to the Foreign Minister for the warmth of the welcome, and the invitation to this excellent forum. And of course, the UK government does continue to support the journey for the region to the European Union, and we continue to call on sustainment of unity. And I think if there's a message, looking at the title for the event throughout the morning and throughout this panel, it is that sustaining unity in the European Union and NATO, which I think is the message we should all be careful to preserve and protect. And again, I'm recalling what Foreign Minister Kuleba, in his impressive remarks this morning, reminded us. Of course, Russia will try to undermine both the European Union and NATO, and that's not new. And will do that through influence that is already in the region. And that's not been said yet on this panel, but I think it's true to say there is Russian influence here in the region, and we need to understand it and be ready to call it out when we find it. And I think the Foreign Minister from Montenegro made that very clear. And of course, we have all said in different ways, going back to your question on Northern Ireland, that we must not allow political problems to become security issues. And as a former military person, I would say that in very loud and clear terms. But I also struck by something the Deputy Foreign Minister from Bosnia-Herzegovina said. We need to understand how close we are to the threshold of some of these political problems becoming security issues. And so the UK government, going back to your question to me, continues to support the international forces presence in the region, both in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in Kosovo. And the UK continues to support that, and the sustainment of the Office of the High Representative and other international institutions in both Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it's maybe not said often enough, but we need to make sure that we don't put the safe and secure environment in the region at risk by changing something, because that could suit Russia. The UK government, in answer to your question, continues to support both the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue and particularly offer the strongest support for Miroslav Lajčák's role in supporting that. And we continue to worry about the secession risk in Bosnia. I think the risk, as you said, sir, is real, and we must reject any form of secession, which then leads to, again, another opportunity for Russia in pursuit of those long-term policies. I'd also like to compliment the Foreign Minister from Greece, and nice to see you again, sir, for reminding us of the need to keep an economic prospect in mind when we discuss political issues. Russia has weaponized energy. Russia has weaponized food security. Russia cares about the destruction of infrastructure in Ukraine, and she's made that very clear with her actions. And we need to push back on this and develop our own strategies. Regional infrastructure integration, energy modernization, security of supply. And the UK continues to support the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, all the EU initiatives, and we have new money, both in terms of British international investment and the UK Export Fund, to do that. And those projects now, I would ask us as a politically minded group to see those very much as part of the national security offer for the region, and not just as infrastructure projects or energy projects. So we need to make sure that we do push back against Russia in all ways. And the why. I'm the last speaker at the end of a long panel, at the end of a long and important conference, because we all need to work together, including the UK government, whether it's here or at home or with the formats we have through the G7, through NATO, through the European Union and the OSCE and all the other platforms. We need to give more hope to the next generation of the young and talented people of this region. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. And I would just like to start now discussion among you. What is your position on President Macron's view on a political union? He included even Great Britain, so we can start from you and follow back on the other. How do you see this enlargement in future, comparing with this position of President Macron on the political union? That maybe on some issues, European Union should integrate more.
We don't see it as a substitute for the accession process. Mm-hmm. We wait to see more details and wait to see how it develops in Brussels and elsewhere. But in the meantime, we continue, the UK government's position is very clear. We must continue to support Ukraine, as we heard this morning. We need to continue to support unity, particularly through NATO. And you can expect the UK to continue to play a leading role in NATO. And NATO, as many panelists have made clear, as many people who have spoken all day have made clear, remains that important guarantee of peace. And competing agendas will only weaken that guarantee.
Right, thank you very much. I'm just opening floor for the other participants to take their part and to say, yeah.
Very briefly, misuse that I'm sitting next to Sir Stuart. I've been thinking a lot about this proposal, and you know, I see parallel with the Partnership for Peace. Actually, when it was introduced, and my country and many other countries were working to become full members of NATO, we had many doubts what the PFP means, and is it like a detour? Is it something that waiting room or something that should be the end station? But in the end, it turned out to be an instrument that helped us to get full membership in NATO for all those who were willing and met the conditions. But also it was the end station for those who were happy to end up there. And they had no higher ambitions. But at the same time, those who are still PFP members are not lost anywhere. They are somehow anchored to the NATO and to the security arrangement. So if this would be the ambition of President Macron's initiative, I think it will really help to the accession process, and it will also help those who will not make it to the membership, to the full membership, but will still be part of the wider European community.
Thank you.
I think it's a good debate to be had because with Russia's war of aggression, it's very clear that we need to rethink about the security and political architecture in Europe. We as European Union need to be more geostrategic and find ways of bringing our partners in Europe closer to us. So I think this is this proposal can be a very good sort of spark for a debate about this. However, there's clear two preconditions need to be met, as you already mentioned, Mr. Peach. This cannot be an alternative to the accession process to the EU. That's very, very clear. And second, we also already have very good formats such as the Council of Europe, the OSCE, so it also shouldn't be a competitor to these formats. On the contrary, we also think that the Council of Europe needs to be strengthened because with its strong founding in the rule in human rights, it also can play a very important role in strengthening those values, also with the legal instruments attached to it. So I think we need to continue with the debate about whether a European political community or something similar can bring additional merits, particularly because we know that the accession process, because it's merits-based, might take some time, and it could potentially be a good interim step for some countries interested in it to actually gain a closer connection, a closer geostrategic unity also with the EU prior to accession. So I think in this direction, but with a view of tangible benefits, tangible steps, we should continue the debate.
Right.
I would echo some of the points made of not being a substitute for accession, but I really think it's important to, as a discussion platform, as a way to start working on that, creating the values of the European membership before it's reached to that point. As Minister Lehrman just said, it's a longer process, but we should also not be thinking of the accession process as a box-ticking exercise. It's the fact that a country has started accession doesn't mean it's no longer prone to external influences. The process of instilling the values of European membership and integration, it is really long and requires a lot of internal work. So if this could be a platform that can be complementary to the accession process in that aspect of really providing that require dialogue and exchange and cooperation that are on a political level, but also that really helps to instill those European values, that's when I can see it being beneficial, just because it's really not a believer that the fact that a country has started an accession makes it immediately immune to any other influences. So keeping that ethos of European community is something that perhaps such a format could help with throughout the process of integration of countries.
This is the key issue, that the new idea is not substituting our pledge and promise from Thessaloniki 2003 on full membership of all the countries within the EU once the conditions are met. And I can encourage EU, of course, to continue on with the debate on this platform, but please continue with the enlargement as well. And only by deeds you are going to show that this is not a substitute, because the region, as I said and concluded my introductory, time is not an ally on our side. Point number one. Point number two, all the countries have very much limited resources, material, human, whatever, to yet fuel another that for the time being is not the substitute for the full membership, but could, be a platform that is, maybe going into this direction. Because of the same principle, Bosnia and Herzegovina yet not have full consensus on Open Balkan Initiative for the region, because we are not convinced that this is not a substitute for the real regional cooperation. To this extent, again, we are welcoming out-of-box thinking, because the enlargement process as such stuck as of 2013 until today. We don't have a new member country within the EU. Something needs to happen, but the enlargement and the full membership, according to Thessaloniki Council conclusions 2003, must be a goal for both of us on the EU and on the Southeast Europe side.
Officially, not now geographically, our country, Ukraine, candidate for EU. Politically our country, not now only geographically our country, is in the war. And for the decent people, normal politicians, democratic politicians, it's not easy to put that in our heads. We have to understand that we are in some kind of the war with the other side. Like leading country in European integration is Montenegro. You can see now new waves of malign influences in Montenegro due to the politics or policy of the foreign third countries is as worse and as better on the Balkans. More troubles on the Balkans, more tensions on the Balkans. It's easier for them to do job in Ukraine or the other locations in EU. And we have to understand this is not logic of the peaceful time. It is logic of the Kotor logic of the fleet on the open sea, well armed and capable to open the new spaces of alliances, friendship, to go on the bigger seas, but to be ready to, on that way, solve all those issues.
Thank you.
Well, going back to the original discussion on what your question was on President Macron, I don't want to repeat what already has been said, and I think it appears that there's a consensus between us on how this is being viewed. The only thing I would add is that I think also it's a mechanism which will try to address the accession fatigue of the populations, to give something that looks tangible, so that the societies keep the effort forward. Because I'm afraid accession fatigue is also something very visible, especially in the Western Balkans. Thank you.
Mr. Redman?
Yeah, in principle, so we are not against any ideas, new ideas, but of course they should be sustainable and provide additional benefits, of course. And because we are members of European Union, should also work in favor of our European unity and the EU itself. However, in any, of course, discussion on possible new structures and what also Nikos mentioned, mechanisms, we need, of course, first of all, to start from an analysis of their added value and avoid any form of duplication of existing mechanism. It is also the case with the open Balkan. We are not against open Balkan, of course, but in a situation where we have quite a proliferation of the many conceptions and approaches, and having in mind that open Balkan doesn't include all the countries of the Western Balkan, and having in mind that we have an already Berlin process, I think so we should just not to respect even existing processes and to avoid any kind of duplication. So if in open Balkan it's not composition of all the countries of the West Balkan, I think doesn't work, and we cannot, of course, in general we support, of course, but it's up to the countries. But we cannot support duplication and so many proliferations.
Right, thank you very much. And finally.
Thank you. First of all, it's difficult to give my opinion about that because there is not really an explanation what is this process. And I can, at this moment, just tell you what our opinion is from that, what we have read on the surface, but there has been no process of telling the countries in the Balkan, what is this idea about? This is again an example of talking about us instead of talking with us. And this is always difficult because we all give opinions about something that nobody explained in detail what it is about. The problem is the Western Balkans have a very clear, most of the countries there, a very clear Euro-Atlantic perspective. There's one country who is not interested in NATO, but the rest, as we heard, Bosnia and Herzegovina as well, are very interested in being part of the NATO and part of the European Union. And now it's very logically that the European Union membership is not a question of geography. It's a question of democracy, of European values, and of the readiness of countries to implement all the European standards in rule of law, in democracy, and in all other political aspects. This is the criteria. If the new idea is a kind of European Union kindergarten, where you need to go through to come to the elementary school and then again to go further, then I really must say very clear, no, we are not interested. Because 2003, the promise was very clear, the full European integration. And this is the only final step we are interested in. We are not interested in alternatives to the European Union. And we also are not interested in having processes who give us the idea that there could be other alternatives. The alternative, the perspective must be very clear. Full integration in the European Union for every one of the countries in the Western Balkans who are, first of all, interested in it, and second, who are ready to implement the European standards and values. This should be the criteria. So, no geography, but democracy and other criteria. That's why the Open Balkan initiative is so difficult, because Open Balkan, to whom and to what open? We heard the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov telling us very openly, we are in favor of Open Balkan, and Germany and United States are against that and for the Berlin process. Yes, we think that the Berlin process is very important to continue, and we appreciate very much that the new German government has promised to have a Berlin process 2.0, and we hope that this will be now very soon in the early autumn, so that the perspective and the roadmap is very clear. We do not need new ideas, all the ideas are there. We do not need new structures, because the structures we have, we are committed to the common regional market. So help us to help ourselves and build the common regional market, and then let us stay together in dialogue so that the region has a clear perspective towards the European Union. Thank you.
I thank you very much. I think that these are the best concluding words on this conversation. Maybe before I conclude, and thank you for this thoughtful and interesting observation that Western Balkan countries need a dialogue and needs to be communicated to and not to be told what to do. So this is something that I would also praise once again, organizer of this Dubrovnik Forum, to give a platform for these meetings, and also coming back to the Greece presidency in 2003 in Thessaloniki summit, when there was a clear perspective for the enlargement. We must, and 20 years after the Zagreb summit, also Croatian advocacy for the enlargement, we must open the space for the communication and to exclude this dependency of Western Balkan countries of foreign influence, regardless of which foreign influence that is. I mean, at this time, the Russian malign influence is the most visible one, is the most destructive one, but we are having the more danger coming in the future, and we know with our transatlantic partners what we will be facing in the future. So we need to close this black hole in Western Balkan. We need to finish this unfinished business. Also, we need to get our partners back in order to have a safe and secure, all our borders, Eastern Partnership, Southern, and even the ones that are coming from the outside. So, Minister Radman, you wanted to say something before we invite our guests for the lunch and.
Okay. Yeah, just because you like Dubrovnik so much, and please save the day, and you are invited as well for the next Dubrovnik Forum, 16th. 7th and 8th July 2023, and in 2023 Dubrovnik will be on a even better connected, well-connected car destination with Pelješac Bridge. So you are invited, you are welcomed.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you to the moderator and the esteemed panelists of the today's panel, as well as all the other panelists, and for all the fruitful and provoking discussions we had the opportunity to hear today. The ideas you heard today will also be available online on the YouTube channel of the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of the Republic of Croatia, just to note. And dear guests, this wraps up the working part of the conference of this year's Dubrovnik Forum. We will now proceed with a VIP lunch that is hosted by Minister Gordan Grlić-Radman. Thank you once again for joining us. We look forward to welcome you again in Dubrovnik in July 2023. Thank you for coming, and enjoy the rest of your stay in Dubrovnik. Thank you.